The way that we provide our reporting results really does help empower the development teams in particular, and then anything that has to go back to design, of course, helps empower them to make those decisions moving forward. So when we produce an audit, we don't just tell our client what's wrong. We don't say, here's the success criteria. Your image doesn't have alternative text. Go fix it.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, this is Max Pittman from WriteForMe, and you're listening to another episode of the Business Ninjas podcast, where we meet the experts who are making things happen and scaling their businesses. And today, we're talking about Zenyth Group with Daryn Harpaz, who's the CEO and founder of Zenyth Group, and Mrs. Juliette Alexandria, who's the project lead and accessibility subject matter expert at Zenyth Group. Thank you both so much for joining us today.
Hi, Max. Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Lovely to be here as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate you guys taking part in this, and I'm excited to dive into what's going on at Zenyth Group. You are in the website accessibility space, and the company itself has been around since 2016, so about 7 years. And I'm definitely excited to dive into what's going on there at Zenyth Group. But before we dive into the organization itself and who you're working with and what your focuses are, our Business Ninjas community is built of entrepreneurs, executives, sales and marketing leaders as well. So, Daryn, for you now, as the CEO and founder at Zenyth Group, let's start with you. Feel free to tell the Business Ninjas community a little bit about yourself, your role and some of the things you're focused on, and then Juliette, feel free to jump in after Daryn.
Perfect. Thanks, Max. Well, hi, Business Ninjas community. It's great to be here today, and we're looking forward to chatting with you about ADA website accessibility. So, from the top down, essentially, we're talking about the Americans with Disabilities Act, and under that umbrella, we're focusing specifically on website accessibility, making websites accessible for people with disabilities. And Zenyth is uniquely focused and highly specialized in end-to-end digital accessibility. What that means is we focus very heavily on manual auditing. We provide fully managed code remediation. So we actually either build web and mobile from the ground up to be ADA compliant, fully accessible, or most often, remediate existing platforms to be ADA compliant, which is very much like reverse engineering if you think of it from a development perspective. And then offering a full suite of services for monthly ongoing compliance and support, corporate consulting, policy, and we've also built a suite of services, which we can talk more about during the podcast. I should say a suite of software applications for the management of the whole lifestyle, of the whole life cycle and accessibility process, training, compliance, and of course, just keeping all the moving pieces in sync across, our clients in both the SME and SMB space.
Fantastic. Yeah, appreciate you kind of diving into a little bit about, the organization itself, and definitely want to dive into a little bit more around how you guys service your customers and what their challenges might look like. And you can see why it'd be very important to be in this space to make websites more accessible for people with disabilities. And Juliette, let's talk a little bit about your role as a subject matter expert there.
Sure. Well, I actually started my professional career interested in criminology, got my bachelor's, and wasn't finding anything that really clicked with me. And so I had an amazing opportunity to come into a program that was developing from the ground up. So I got my teeth chopped there. I rose to the technical lead and then their director of accessibility, and at a certain point kind of outgrew them because they became very PDF focused. And I really wanted to stay into website and native application accessibility. That's where all of the really cool stuff is happening. That's where all the advances are being made and the new technology is coming out. And being on the cutting edge of that, I just really enjoy in a personal way. And I think that that's where you can make the most impact for the most people. So I shifted my focus and came on with Zenyth Group a couple of years ago, where I became the project lead and subject matter expert. So I lead a small band of really impassioned, talented, amazing accessibility auditors and developers. I work primarily with clients, working on project scoping, oversight, and helping them through that journey. And then, of course, all of the team oversight to keep the projects going and our skills as sharp as possible. I feel like one of my primary responsibilities in this role is to continue to be on that cutting edge and continue to expand our knowledge and services so that we can provide the best options to our customers. And that really does take staying up on all of the most current trends and development. So I spend quite a bit of my time doing that as well.
Sure. Well, I'm curious, like, maybe as we go along, how the industry maybe has changed since the Ant Group's inception, in the mid to late 2000s. But I appreciate you kind of sharing some of your background as well, what brought you here and what your focuses are. I saw a really interesting statistic, Daryn. You guys, I'm sure you talk about this a lot, which is 1 in 4 U.S. adults, over 61 million Americans, have a disability that impacts them in their life activities. So maybe we can kind of go back to 2017, 7 years ago. What's the origin story here, Daryn? For Zenyth Group, what was that back of the napkin light bulb aha moment to start to do something in the space?
Speaking of the stats, that's something I've known for a while. When you think of the US population, if you think of the global population, it's over 1 billion people. I think the recent market research indicates that only, I think maybe 3% of websites are fully accessible. So, and this is 7 years later, right? 2016, I was working with a autism services provider here in California, and through that engagement, got to meet some of the customers and clients in that space, and heard about issues of parents and children trying to access the internet, not being able to. It's the first time I'd heard of it. And I realized there was a significant problem. And by researching that challenge, I saw the opportunity to really make a difference. This is both a technical issue, it's a social impact issue, it's a human cause issue, and essentially we were a custom web and mobile app development company, and very much within a week, maybe 10 days max, I had rebranded the entire organization, made a full commitment to just digital compliance. We got rid of any service that didn't feed accessibility directly. And we've been, entirely focused as a mission-driven organization to move the needle on digital accessibility through our focus. If a client comes to us and they want to build a website and they're not interested in ADA compliance, we will certainly refer them to some folks in the industry that might be better served to that need. But really, understanding the market space at the time came through direct, involvement with that space. Just an amazing aha moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So you guys started as a web development company, right? Is that what I heard?
I was previously a web development company, and I rebranded and refocused services and came back to market with 100% ADA compliance as a mission for the organization. Mm-hmm. And so we've hired and we've built on that premise. Mm-hmm. And through that, we've been able to build a beautiful culture based on the principles of accessibility and the passion and the cause for helping to make the internet accessible to people with disabilities.
I love it. I mean, it's incredible to hear that there's companies out there like yourself that are doing this, and it's inspiring for sure to see how you guys are here to help make the internet more accessible to people who aren't as fortunate as we are. So that's definitely something I can get behind, and it's definitely inspiring. With that in mind, with the entire internet as a potential customer or customers, with websites, I guess. Are there specific verticals or industries that you see as a fit for you? Is there, I'm just kind of curious, how do you group that? Like, how do you make an ideal customer out of the entire internet?
So, I mean, the catalyst behind space is unfortunately driven largely by legal risk. So there's a matrix of compliance for customers that are in certain spaces. Retail's been hit the hardest. Websites that have e-commerce are certainly high up on that list. And so if sites are selling a product, they typically, online or retail, they're very much on a high risk matrix. We see businesses across the board, across the spectrum, professional services, tourism and travel, restaurants, food services, healthcare. Got a couple of law firms come to us as well, although they're certainly lower on the risk. I think the question for us is more, which industries haven't we served yet? There might only be 2 or 3 that we haven't touched. Manufacturing, logistics, these tend to not have a lot of lawsuits behind them or much of a customer-facing brand. They really tend to be more behind the scenes. But there are thousands, and there are thousands of lawsuits a year, kind of as a catalyst behind this. And there's, a large amount of demand letters that we can't even track that kind of also fuel this whole, legal side of the debate. I will say though that you asked a question earlier about several years back to today. I think the first 3 years for us was really trying to convince customers and educate customers around why accessibility was important, in addition to what it was. Now that it's more, even though it's in early stages and still a large scale problem, there's a lot more awareness. We're seeing a lot of case law and precedent setting standards for organizations, kind of looking to get into compliance side of the equation. But certainly retail is a large sector there.
I appreciate that. That makes a lot of sense. Why like retail e-commerce companies would be a great fit. You mentioned, maybe some of the problems that some of these companies might have are helping them avoiding lawsuits. Is that like a typical kind of challenge that you're solving for these customers? Is it, I'm just, again, as an outsider, I'm not sure. So like, what are some of those challenges that these companies may be having?
Well, I can certainly talk to you about that on the legal and business logistics side of the equation, and Juliette can address that from more the technical and accessibility side. 7 years ago, it was 100% of customers coming to us with a lawsuit or a demand letter from the legal side of the equation. We've seen a steady shift, a downward trend in that, but we're probably about 60% of our customers getting a lawsuit or demand letter first, and a healthy 40% wanting to get ahead of that equation now, which is a lovely shift in the marketplace. It shows awareness, it shows an awakening. But the end result's the same. Customer wants to serve a demographic that is underserved. They want to tap into a very loyal, sector of the market that are great brand ambassadors. They want to do the right thing, and they want their platforms to be accessible to people with all abilities, right?
Gotcha.
Yes, and in terms of the kind of challenges that businesses face from a technical perspective when implementing any of this accessibility is simply most developers don't have this on their radar. Accessibility is still a very kind of niche area in terms of knowledge transfer. They're starting to include it in some of the coursework for up-and-coming developers, but anybody in the industry, unless they've made it their purpose to learn this, it just isn't on their radar. So organizations are finding that they don't have the in-house development resources to fix things once they're identified. They don't have the folks who can identify what the issues are. Um, and then many of the content management systems that are used to build and maintain these websites are pretty inaccessible, at least many of the older themes. So a lot of the themes we're seeing coming out in the last year or two are better. But any kind of website that was built 3 or 4 years ago just probably doesn't have accessibility in it. So when you're talking about a smaller e-commerce retailer, that's, you can get in there, you can do the remediation work, you can work with them about their new builds to ensure that that continues moving forward. But when you come to a large multinational corporation or anything like that, the challenge really is getting those resources in-house so that they can maintain it moving forward, helping them identify accessible component libraries and things like that, to really lighten the load moving forward. So it's getting that business to kind of the accessible ground level and then helping support them to maintain that moving forward so that we don't have to do it all for them forever, because that's not sustainable for the company.
Gotcha. It sounds a little bit maybe like that's a little bit around like the secret sauce there at Zenyth Group. Maybe why they go with you over the competition is kind of the ability to make these suggestions into what potential CMS platforms, should be recommended for these smaller e-commerce retailers who probably have no idea what this even is, right?
Exactly. If I may, Daryn, we have a lot of experience in all of the main CMSs. So at this point, that's Shopify, BigCommerce, Webflow, and WordPress. There are always new ones coming out, these kind of no-code solutions, which hit or miss in terms of accessibility, depending on which one you're talking about. But yes, making a decision about, okay, we don't have an accessible site. The kinds of things you have to evaluate are, are the resources going to be more to bring this site into compliance, or should we just rebuild it somewhere else that has a better foundation of accessibility and, leverage that CMS's inherent accessibility? So what does that look like? Making those kinds of decisions with an organization, helping them make those component choices so moving forward what they build will be accessible. All of that is a very unique solution depending on what that particular client needs in terms of the website, the size of their revenue, the kind of product control they need to have, any of the kind of marketing hook-ins and things like that on the back end. All of that affects the kinds of choices we would make about where to platform. And the intersection of accessibility and platforms is that special sauce. A lot of people have all sorts of recommendations about which CMS is best for the functional side of things, but where accessibility intersects with that is definitely our specialty.
Yeah, just said. Yeah.
So it definitely sounds like it's more of like a white glove approach. Then, hey, here's some technology, roll it out, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's not sustainable, I don't think. We do talk about that.
It certainly is a bigger conversation, but at its core, we believe that you cannot fully decouple a human experience, the hands-on approach from accessibility as a solution. We certainly do leverage some automation tools to drive efficiency. We're currently hitting about 40%. The goal is to get that up to about 60%. Bringing in some AI at some point to even push those results a little further. But 30 to 40% of the work's always going to be done by a person with specialized skills and from the perspective of the disability itself. Using assistive technology. So technology can't solve the subjective kind of part of the equation. So just to take a little step back here, this is a much more complex and dynamic problem to solve for. So Max, assume you're the business, a larger business, right? And you have many moving pieces across your divisions, your marketing, you have your sales, your product development, QA, manufacturing, distribution, and you got to keep it all, going together. So a lot of touch points across your technology. So from the very first pixel down, right? Line in the sand, which is not ADA compliant, you start building designs, and those designs start getting propagated across your divisions in your organization. Some digital, some not. But now those designs get translated into, websites and mobile apps and technology platforms. That very first pixel, which was a very small problem, becomes a much larger issue because now it's in thousands and thousands of places. So we come in at that very first kind of like pixel down and help organizations understand what that first kind of initiative looks like, and then build policy around ADA compliance across their divisions, design, marketing, development, Q&A, and then, the rest of the kind of umbrella. And beyond that, a measure of product and service, a healthy mix of product and service, their full visibility into all those life cycles, because it is a dynamic, fast-moving, fluid, ever-evolving situation. That's why the internet can't catch up with accessibility, because I think the most recent stat was something about 200 or 250,000 websites going live every day. Like, it's some massive number, right? 2 billion websites. It's a staggering amount of work to have to go back and remediate. It's just not possible. So organizations have a one shot or a small window to get this done right, because at some point they cannot sustain the level of effort, finance, the resources to keep going back to ground zero every time. So helping an organization see that, figure it out, identify the risk, and keep the risk off the table, that's kind of like the summation of how we really work with our customers across our verticals, or their verticals. So hopefully a little more clarity for you there.
Sure. Yeah, reducing risk, saving money are obviously the two big areas you help out with, but also, there's obviously the mission behind it and helping the internet, helping people who have these disabilities keep up with the internet too. So like, how are you thinking about, this space and educating it, right? Like, you have such a massive full addressable market, right? So, and I know you're not the only player, out here in this space as well. So like, how are you, educating, your prospective customers?
Education is absolutely key. We have built an online training platform for our customers. Organizations can enable their employees to go in there and learn self-paced. We also provide instructor-led classes. What we like to do is we like to bundle our approach at the beginning of an audit, an accessibility engagement, while the organization have their staff being trained up on our platform. We're conducting the audit, and we're using the results of the audit as live code to help the organization not only fix their platform, but educate on accessibility and learn best practices while they're implementing the fixes for their own project. We really find that is very effective in terms of kind of, teach the teacher model. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Train the trainer model, I should say.
I would go further to say that the way that we provide our reporting results really does help empower the development teams in particular, and then anything that has to go back to design, of course, helps empower them to make those decisions moving forward. So when we produce an audit, we don't just tell our client what's wrong. We don't say, here's the success criteria. Your image doesn't have alternative text. Go fix it. We say, your image doesn't have alternative text. Here's what we recommend. Here's some resources. And here's our specific example for that image that might need that alt text. Coupled with any audit that we produce for any client is typically complimentary bucket of oversight hours. So after we give the audit results to the teams, if there's anything at any point that they don't understand, they can come back to us and we will work through them, whether it be an email, a Slack exchange, jumping on Zoom, having that call, screen sharing. we make sure that there is time to support those teams as they wrap their head around accessibility lingo and, implementation patterns and all of that kind of stuff. So even if an organization, which we do not recommend, chooses not to train their employees in a formal way, we make sure that what we provide to them with the audit is going to be actionable for their developers in a way that helps train their developers moving forward. The fifth time you've read about your heading hierarchy, hopefully those developers are starting to absorb some of that. We also, for remediation, when we hand off the remediation back to the other development team, if that's what the client has opted for, we provide developer best practices, SOPs, things like that, that are more in depth than a checklist and easier to read than the really technical specifications that kind of summarize all of those requirements in easy to read, human understandable language. So we try to provide resources all throughout the process so that those teams can upskill themselves. We really do think that that's an important part of the equation to addressing the overall problem.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, so when are typically like these audits happening? Are these when people are, reaching out to you, say, hey, we got audited, or we're in a lawsuit? Like how, I get from the outside looking in, so it's kind of hard to tell, like when you are doing an audit, like what's the situation, that people are coming to you with?
Yeah, it's audits for the most part are starting with a demand letter or a lawsuit.
Gotcha.
That's the first step in any direction. If an organization is being proactive or if they're being reactive, it always starts with an audit. It's we've got to get under the hood and pull out the engine and inspect all the parts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we've built a custom accessibility management platform. Our clients can log in and they can see all the full life cycle of the audit, who's assigned, the dates that it's been worked on, screenshots of the issue, nice, clear, precise recommendations with code examples. It's very granular. That's what Juliette's referring to. That hugely empowers, teams and the organizations we serve to not just fix the problem, but knowledge is power, right?
Definitely.
Make good decisions once they have that knowledge. And we always see that this kind of like this energy spreads like wildfire. We quickly make ambassadors, digital ambassadors out of all of our wonderful partners and clients and their teams, because they genuinely, once they start working on the project, they're always engaged, they're always involved, they always want to learn more. So it is it's the intersection of social impact and technology. It's a human equation. Mm-hmm. It's a technology equation. It's like like we talked about, it's still very much in its infancy, but it's a very large scale problem.
Yeah. Is there something that you've thought about, Daryn, like as the owner and founder, that you're working towards over the next year? Is there something like you want to be celebrating that you think is accomplishable, maybe not even by the end of this year, maybe a year from today, in May of next year? I'm just kind of curious if there's what types of goals you guys are striving towards.
Lovely question. Zenyth is very much focused on building partnerships in the industry, where we can align and serve in a way that elevates the accessibility equation across broader markets. For example, at the intersection of diversity, equity, inclusion, the DEI space, and accessibility, there's a lovely area to carve out and play there. So we just announced a formal partnership with Mitratech, formerly Circa, the nation's largest platform for building inclusive teams and hiring platforms for organizations. And so playing at that intersection of DI and accessibility for us right now is going to give us an opportunity to have a much bigger loudspeaker. Plus, Mitratech is very much heavily involved in the government side of the space, and the regulations are far more definitive and well carved out for agencies. Mm-hmm. So we're looking forward to developing shared content, doing webinars, writing some articles, and getting into the space of our combined worlds and really just building a much bigger message. I think those two worlds really intersect nicely. We are continuing to build technology. It's a big push for us. We will always, have a healthy measure of manual, of the manual equation left over for us to really specialize in. But if it's not too overplayed, I think the AI conversation is very much relevant to us. We want to be able to automate certain things, and I can have Juliette talk about this in a moment, but we want to be able to automate those things that we know AI can solve for at this time, minus the subjective equation. And then also just using technology to build a smarter workflow and approach for our customers to truly, consume and engage with us throughout the entire accessibility journey, because it is a journey. This is a commitment, and it takes time. And once we get an organization to a level of compliance, the next level is really the art of helping them maintain that in a more elegant way, without the brute force of coming with a big audit and heavy code remediation and that kind of approach. So I think we'd like to solve for that in a lovely kind of more heartfelt and elegant way, without without going down too much of a path where the customer is just committing to more and more manual labor.
Yep.
How do you see that, Juliette?
Pretty much the same. I would like to see over the next year, I would like to see us continuing building out our software offerings to clients, like you were just discussing, because I think that kind of really integrated end-to-end platform that tracks all of the information over the lifetime of a project and makes it accessible, not to people with disabilities, but able to be accessed and cataloged and tracked in a way that is useful and meaningful to the organization, is really important. And empowering organizations with the language to talk about these kinds of things internally, so that everybody is on the same page about, what a defect is, what that looks like, how to track it, how to resolve it. All of that kind of stuff can be very challenging for organizations. So a centralized platform where they can take advantage of that really solid knowledge base, I think, is going to go a long way. And that is going to be one of our big focuses for this coming year. So I'm really excited to see how that goes. But the AI and how that interacts with this kind of platform is going to be the really interesting thing. So, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows that ChatGPT and all of these kind of generative AI models that are out there have issues. They give incorrect information. But we are interested in the things, like Daryn said, that we know that they can do correctly, and how to leverage that and get that into our platform to really enable our auditors and clients who are using our platform to be efficient. So we're looking at what is really repeatable on a large scale and reliable, and where that intersection is with accessibility. There's a lot of kind of skepticism in the community right now in general around ChatGPT and similar AI models because of the inaccuracy. So we're really interested to see how that can be boosted, how we can adjust knowledge sets so that it's reducing those inaccuracies and providing these results that we can depend on. So I'm really interested to see the intersection of that and how that will move into our platform once the AI part is a little bit more stable and repeatable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like it's a really interesting time at Zenyth Group, especially with, again, the intersection of AI and how that's evolving very quickly. But it sounds like from what I'm hearing from both of you, like a couple of things that are top of mind are continuing to build a smarter workflow, continuing to develop the technology in your own software, growing your partnerships, and also seeing how from an AI perspective, like how you can leverage AI or how companies are leveraging AI to meet them where they're at from an accessibility perspective. Are all different ways that you're thinking about growing in this growing industry. I had one last question. By the way, does that sound fair? Like kind of wrapping things up. Okay.
But we haven't spoken about this, but Zenyth is unique in the fact that we really built the organization up from the legal first perspective, coming at it from a framework of, right, there's a lawsuit, let's identify the risk, developing a risk matrix. How do we respond to the demand letter or the suit? What does the rebuttal look like? The expert witness testimony, the deposition work that we've done. We've put our names on many an affidavit to help get those lawsuits dismissed. Our compliance program is specifically catered to building a legal equation, if you will, or a legal shield. And so we very much still want to develop a much more mature approach to the legal side of the equation as we start to see DOJ and Congress respond, which over the next couple of years will happen. And then that'll help us flush out that path, but we are just building and towards that, so we can be very, very much ready to react to maintaining our position on the legal side of the equation. We haven't spoken about that much, but that is definitely something that we're going to maintain a strong foothold in. Helping our clients work directly with legal counsel and their defense litigators when this is a case that needs to settle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's interesting. Like as you guys make the websites more accessible, providing accessibility as a solution, helping customers save money, time, effort, energy, and helping to empower these teams to help build more congruent, or I guess you could say, a flow within like policy across the company, across their divisions are going to be ways to help in ensuring that these companies aren't spending more time, effort, and energy in this remediation process. So it seems very impactful for what you guys are doing at Zenyth Group. Is there anything else, like as we wrap up here, that you think our listeners need to understand or hear? And how can people get a hold of you if people are experiencing these problems? What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Lovely. So we offer free assessments to any organization who just wants to understand initially what some of the impact looks like. Those assessments can be very useful to start the conversation. Those assessments help us kind of build estimates around what an audit timeframe and cost might look like. And this is just information to help organizations make a decision. Can we afford this? How long is it going to take? What does it look like? What's the scope of work? Who needs to sign off? So if any organization is looking for to take a step forward, we certainly would love to be involved in that conversation early on. And in responding to this, early is the key. If you do have a demand letter, don't ignore it. Take action right away. The best way to get to us is probably through our website, zenythgroup.com. There's a free assessment form there that you're welcome to use. You can either email myself, Daryn at zenythgroup.com. That's Daryn. And I'm assuming we can send this information out with the podcast as well, Max. Or Juliette's email will be attached as well. And call us too. We love chatting. We love the conversation around accessibility. It's an interesting problem to solve for. And we are uniquely, kind of set up and focused on this equation. So given that this is all we do, we're very effective and very good at getting it done.
Fantastic. Yes. Yep. I'll definitely ensure we include the links to find you and make sure people who are going through remediation or who are interested in learning more over to the zenythgroup.com website. Everyone, who's listening, if you are experiencing these types of issues or want to optimize the site, or want to be, proactive versus reactive, definitely give Zenyth a shout. And Juliette, Daryn, I really appreciate both of you being here today. I appreciate and enjoyed the conversation. Yep. I believe wholeheartedly in what you're doing, right? You do as well. There's definitely a big social impact to the internet, and ensuring like the people who need help and getting the information they need can do that very easily. And they're not all as fortunate as we are to be able to leverage it in kind of the way that we all think that you should be leveraging the internet, right? So everyone has their own unique story, and I feel like I've learned a lot about Zenyth Group and your approach to again making websites more accessible. And I appreciate you being here, part of the Business Ninjas community, and helping to tell your story.
Thank you, Max. I really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you so much. It was great to speak with you and all of your Business Ninja listeners.
You bet. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys being here too. Thanks again for the conversation. That wraps up another episode of our Business Ninjas podcast. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of the day.